So estate planning is an important part as a real estate agent in helping our customers prepare for buying or selling property, and as well as increasing their income and building wealth long term. We're excited today to have a attorney who specializes in estate planning from St. Louis, Missouri, the Show Me State, Jennifer Jennings of MGD Law. Jennifer, thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
And your good friend of the program, Michael Zwick and Kevin Bemmel. So you really come with special credentials to us today.
Well, thank you.
So how did you end up in estate planning as an attorney of all the different fields of law? What brought you into estate planning?
I don't know that we have enough time for that.
Is there a short version?
Yeah. I was a 2009 financial crisis law school grad. And I did actually always like estate planning, and I liked the idea of helping people be prepared for things. And really, with the financial crisis, you were just lucky if someone was willing to pay you to do anything. So, you know, I was still like dog sitting for my parents' friends at the time when I was working as a lawyer. But I ended up getting a job at a small firm that focused on estate planning and family law. And through that, I really enjoyed the estate planning. I liked the happy part, and I didn't love the family law as much. I had the rule you had to love your kids more than you hated your spouse, and I couldn't control other people with that. I could only control my own clients. And so I ended up deciding it was time to move on. I needed to do something different, but it was still a really rough economy for lawyers. I mean, I was applying for jobs that people with 10 or 15 years of experience had. And I ended up at a financial firm because they thought I would be a good fit for doing financial advising with the estate planning background. And I did that for a while. I moved jobs there. You can read about it in the chapter of my book, Women in Law, Discovering the True Meaning of Success. And so I did that for a while. And then I decided when a change was going to be made that I really loved the legal part of it more than sticking just with the financial planning aspect. I love doing that, and there's still a component of that in what I do, but really I like drafting things. I like doing the estate planning. I don't love the investment side of things as much. You know, following the market, it's fine. It's not what gets me up in the morning. And so I made a few phone calls to a couple of estate planning firms that I worked with a lot and said, hey, I want to go back to practicing law and doing estate planning. And here I am. I found a great fit at a boutique firm, a women-led firm. They all used to work in large firms, and now we're in that boutique setting. It's a great size to be really customized. You know, you're not paying to keep the lights on the 3 floors above us at the same time. And so we can really serve people, and we have a lot of freedom and flexibility to help the people that we're a really good fit with.
So when people come to you with desire for your service as estate planning attorney, what is the problem, or what's the itch that they have that they're coming to you to get scratched?
A lot of times it's people who've had a child and they think, oh my gosh, we need a will. And that is what's really interesting. Everyone has this idea in their head, like that it's a will, that the will is what you need. And yes, a will is very important to have, especially when you have children, because that's the vehicle you use to name guardians. But because the general population, you can only have one day job, does not have an understanding of how money works. How do you transfer money to the next generation? Kids can't inherit money before they're 18. That means it's going to be going into, our terminology is a conservatorship. And, you know, it's going to be a check-in process with the court. They get the money when they're 18. I don't know about you, but if you've got $5 million of life insurance, do you want your 18-year-old to get that outright? Probably not. So a lot of times they come in with that idea, and it's an opportunity to provide some education on, okay, here are all the things that you need to think about when you have a family and you have assets, and how does this money flow? Who do you want to make decisions about taking care of your children's financial needs as well as to their physical needs? And so it usually starts with that and then ends up in a process about an entire estate planning, I guess package is the right, it sounds kind of like a sales thing, but it is a package. It's a bunch of different vehicles that we use in order to achieve their objectives.
And so really we talk about is a case you're either deceased or incapacitated, because the other issue is if you can't take care of your kids, who's going to, and then who's going to take care of you. So there's two aspects. To continuing on the children, you also have a chance to have direction as to their upbringing, their religion, their schooling, their providing for college, not providing for college, whatever your preferences are. That's your chance to kind of control that versus turning it over to the court, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
Now I know it
Yes.
looks like in St. Louis, but in Los Angeles, the last thing you would do is turn over the raising of your children to the county of Los Angeles. That's just not really going to be a victorious solution, I think, in the long run.
Right. No, you have the chance to make those decisions, and they are hard. I get that. It is hard to decide and think about what happens if I die, or
Right.
who do I want to give permission to pull the plug if I'm incapacitated? Do you
Right.
trust this sibling or that sibling? And they're hard decisions, but if you do not make them, somebody is going to make them for you, and
Right.
you may not like that. And a lot of people don't even understand things like, if you have assets that aren't titled properly or they don't have a pay on death provision, your children, so if you just have $1 million sitting in a bank account, no beneficiary on it, in Missouri, your spouse would get the first $20,000 and then split that account 50-50 with your children. And then it goes into the conservatorship for the children. People just think, oh, it just all goes to my spouse. Well, it might not. And so if you want to have control and have the ability to pick what happens yourself and not let somebody else who doesn't know you do it,
Yeah.
this is your opportunity.
Yeah, and if you're okay with your estate being divided up amongst attorneys and your state and county governments, because they need the money more than your family or any charity you could name, great, that's good for you. The state has a plan for your money.
Right. And
So-
I'm okay with it. I mean, I get the phone call when you didn't do everything correctly,
Right.
and
Right.
get to administer that. And that's a lot more money than an estate plan with an occasional check-in, every 5 or 10 years for an update.
Well, that brings up a good point, because one of the things that's shocking is how many very wealthy celebrities never had a plan. Most recently, Jay Leno, he must have been paying attorneys millions of dollars over the years for his tremendous career. I'm sure he's worth tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, but he ends up without a plan, and to have medical decisions for his wife now, he's petitioning the County of Los Angeles for the authorization to make those decisions. And it's not such a simple, they don't just say, oh yeah, you're the husband. It's up to you. There's a process you have to go through, unfortunately, to make those. Michael Jackson famously, with all the attorneys he had, hard to believe nobody said to him, hey, Michael, let's stop for a second. Don't know what you want to do with your money. You want to donate it to somebody or whatever. Let's make a plan. Instead, it gets left up to the courts. Why is it not just celebrities, but so many, and I know you see this, so many customers put off doing something that will make either the end of their life or their next, generation's life so much more pleasant, or avoid so much turmoil? Why? What do you think it is that holds people back?
I think there are a lot of factors. People don't want to think about death. They want to think that they're invincible. We did see an uptick in thinking about it with COVID, because people realized, oh my gosh, there could be a global pandemic that hits and people could die, and we weren't expecting that. But people don't want to think about that. People don't want to spend the money. I understand that you're making an investment, but I always say, if you look around at all the things that you waste money on, the little things that add up, I mean, you've got your estate plan right there, and it does cost more money on the back end to clean things up. And especially, I think you brought up some points with the celebrities, with second marriages. When you have children from different marriages, it is even more complicated. And that's where the fighting can really start. I think there were some issues with Robin Williams, and his wife was not the mother of his children, if memory serves correctly. It wouldn't be the first situation like that. And the kids have one way they think that things should be done, and the spouse has a different idea. And I think people just don't want to deal with it, because it requires you to have to answer difficult questions. But you're not going to get this perfect, right? We can't plan for every possible scenario, but you've got to get something on paper, and you can always come back and refine it later. We don't know how your kids are going to be 15 years from now, but plan for the next 5 to 10 years and think about those circumstances. That's all you can do. And it's really a gift to your family, because I think if you ask anybody who has been there where they lost somebody suddenly, they say one of two things. Oh my gosh, I am so glad that my spouse had everything in order and we had met with the financial planner and we had an estate plan, and or it's the biggest disaster and it's a nightmare and they can't even, it's so stressful. And so I think there are a combination of things. I mean, we always put things off that are important to do. I mean, there's always something more interesting that's going on. And it does take a little bit of discipline to sit down and examine everything and think about things that you don't want to think about, but it is way worse if you don't do it.
It's way worse if you don't, and that becomes a very ugly. And I think you brought up the blended families, which are more and more common. I think, as you know, in my lifetime, as time's gone on, and those are by far the most toxic, because it's one thing, you know, my siblings and I had a family member who passed, and we all get along really well. It was pretty simple, but when you add in the step kids, the stepmother, the step whatever, I just find that it's just like a drag out. They just want to punish each other with lawfare, and it can be expensive, it can be emotional, it can be difficult. It's just, there's nothing good that happens in that process. And so definitely
prenups are good for that. You know, it's really good to have a prenup in the case of a second marriage. And I think when you're doing your estate planning with your first marriage, especially in the case where somebody passes away, you have a way to protect your kids from that first marriage while everything is happy and everything is good and you're happily married to your spouse, and to make sure if somebody dies, if a spouse dies, that there is going to be money that's preserved for the next generation, because it does get tricky, especially if that second marriage is a really long-term marriage, right? Where it's one thing if it's 5-10 years and you both have your own money and assets and everything's kind of separate, but what if that second marriage took place when you were 35 and you spent the next, 40, 50 years with them? That doesn't feel like a second marriage, right, to the spouse. And there might be children that were born of that marriage. How do you plan for that? And I think when everybody is happy and getting along, that's the best time to plan for that, not when there's a problem.
I was really lucky. My father was an attorney. He passed away. But all the assets were left to my mother, which was appropriate. She remarried to an attorney who was a estate planner. And he at least divided their assets, I think, properly, so that when my mother passed before him, it got, and it wasn't really the money at that point. It's really just the recognition of the family structure, right? To some regards, you would treat that as disrespectful to your father who left his money to your mom, and now it's going to some other kid. How does that work? And so that's where these things get to be very difficult, I think, and it's so important to plan ahead. You talk about, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in some cases. Let's talk a little bit about the business side of it, because, I think that real estate agents mistakenly, and most of my population listeners are real estate agents, mistakenly think that attorneys are like Santa Claus at the mall at Christmas time, handing out referrals like candy canes. And the reality is, my experience is most attorneys work with realtors, getting referrals, working together on cases. That's been my business. How can a real estate agent help you in your practice? What's an effective way to bring in referral, and what's an effective way when there's real estate involved to help you with your business, help you with your clients to earn the relationship going forward?
I think referrals are always tricky because you can't go into those with some kind of quid pro quo mentality. Like, I'm giving you one, you have to give me one.
Right.
It's never going to be equal in all of the, with all of the different networks that you have, because a lot of times, right, financial advisors are the ones they're meeting with the financial advisor first. And the financial advisor says, oh, you need an estate planning attorney. Well, that estate planning attorney is probably not going to say, oh, wait, do you want a second opinion from your financial advisor? Because that's a great way to ruin a relationship. And the same with a house, right? Not everybody is buying a house all the time, right? Some people might be renting. It might not be the right phase of life. And I think you develop these relationships, and they are helpful, especially from an informational standpoint, right? When you have a good network of people, I might have a real estate agent I can call and ask a question to. They're happy to answer it, just like I'm happy to answer a quick non-legal advice, but question. And you have a knowledge bank that's available to you. And then when you have those relationships, everybody usually keeps a list of the people they've worked with in the past that they've been happy with. And then maybe we are going to be appointed to handle something with estate administration where our clients are going to ask us for the name of somebody. And we usually give a few names, right? Because it's a good idea to let them make the decision if something goes wrong and you only gave them this, one option. Sometimes that could not be good if it was a bad experience. You hope that's not the case. But I think having those relationships and not expecting something in return, looking at how you can serve your client better, that's the best way to approach it. When I look at my client, I'm thinking, how can I serve my client and provide them with the best experience possible? And so when they have a question, I'm going to use my referral sources to do that. And I think it's helpful when you're both on that mindset. And I understand we all want business. Who doesn't? I mean, I'm not a nonprofit, right? I have to pay my bills. So I think that's a good way to approach it, is just thinking about how you can best serve your client. And then your clients are going to remember that too, right? Maybe you didn't get a referral from that estate planning person or the tax person, but your client was so pleased that you went above and beyond to make sure that they had all of their affairs in order, that they're going to hand your name out to somebody else and say, wow, this was really full service.
There's like two areas I really focus on when I meet a estate planning attorney as far as a service, how I would do things. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying we have to fit our style and make sure that we have a team of people that we are on the same page with. One is on the funding of the estate plan. So many clients come to me as a realtor with a binder with the world's greatest estate plan ever created. Meanwhile, nothing's ever been put in the estate plan. I tell people that's like buying a safe deposit box for your house, or a safe deposit box, and then putting all your valuables on top of the box instead of putting it inside and locking it. And particularly in California, if the property is not deeded in, we have a process you can get through, but it's very expensive, very difficult. So were you, and I know some attorneys feel like they do the plan and then the customer has to follow up on the funding. Some attorneys really integrate the funding of the process as part of their consultative process. Where are you on that? When a customer comes to you, what do they end up with as far as the funding of the plan?
Funding of the plan is part of the process, right? I cannot force you to sit down in a chair, log into your 401k, and make your hands type up the beneficiary designation instructions, right? I mean, there's only so
If only
much
you could. If only you could.
I would, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to violate your terms of service and, log on. So don't give me your password. But we do provide very detailed funding instructions. We go over them. I will bug people about it. I think one of the things that's great about actually having a financial planner in your life is they can be a great help to that, because they have the control over changing the beneficiaries on everything. And so when we go through our diagram that we prepare and we go through the summary of how everything works, we are very big on explaining, like, yes, you're covered. This fancy leather binder, or I think now it's like a regular binder. It's not leather, at least here anymore, but is going to be what you have to rely on if you walk out of the door and you get hit by a bus before you can get anything done, right? Like, everything will end up in your trust. It's just going to be the expensive, longer way to do it. It's like a backup plan, in place. And so we are providing beneficiary instructions. I have done some incredibly detailed, customized beneficiary instructions, because when you're doing retirement planning with assets, like, a lot of people have lots of money in IRAs and 401ks now, and that takes a lot of extra attention to detail, which is why you want to work with an estate planning attorney who understands that. And I will bother people, and I will remind people. I will go about as far as I can go before I literally am, publicly I can't publicly shame you for confidentiality.
If only you could.
I
could. Only you could. There's like a Facebook
you're the
page.
person with the blue shirt that I helped today. Get your stuff done.
Yeah.
But no, that is very important, and I don't think you've done your job if you aren't at least trying to stay on top of that. And so we have people, sometimes it takes years. I mean, I've had clients before who they said they had changed their bank account into their trust over and over. Like, they'd said that, and on their presentation every time that was referred to. They died. We found out they didn't. Well, I mean, what was I going to do when she said she did it? Be like, give me a copy of the confirmation. I don't believe you. I could do that, I guess, but sometimes it takes a long time, but we're willing to go the extra mile. Like I have contacted banks in other states and said, what do I need to send? Do you use your own paperwork? Do you need a trust certification? Let's get this stuff done. And so even sometimes I've even not even billed my time for that. If I have to go do a little extra, I just want it done.
I think for those listening, I think that's the distinction between the self-help and using an attorney is most people who go to LegalZoom or Trust and Will and these others, and I've done it myself, don't follow up. And so you end up with a trust that may not be valuable. It was not, at least in California, it was not signed and witnessed. It doesn't have the force of law. And so what you have is you've spent a little bit of money and got nothing for it. And as realtors, the other thing I want to say is that's why when I get involved, I want to work with the attorney and say, listen, I'm going to follow up on the recording of the real property. That's my area. We have access to public records. It's for most realtors, it's free. We can verify if it was put in the title, it was titled in the trust or not. If it was, send a copy verifying it to the attorney as well as the client, so they know it's done. Put that in the book rather than have them tell the attorney it's done and it's not done.
And we do that for our client. We record the deed on real estate, and if a client has a deed in another has property in another state, we'll have outside counsel, handle the recording there. But we record the deed and have the confirmation, and we are also saying, okay, we got to make sure this is what you have to tell your insurance company. Make sure you add them as an alternate payee, your trust. Make sure your trust isn't insured, and let your mortgage company know, even though there's a statute that covers that it shouldn't trigger a due on sale clause. But we like to check all of the boxes and make sure this is getting done and you're following all the little steps and things that people just don't know about. Because I said this earlier, you can only have one day job. And so there is no shame in not understanding how all of this works. I mean, don't call me if you get arrested. I don't know how to get you out of jail. I mean, I memorized my rights for the bar exam and then I promptly forgot them. And I've got a nice referral list of people I know who do crim law. I hopefully will never need to call for myself. But that's, you have your day job, you stick to it, and you can't possibly know all of the things that can come up. And I know this because I work with very intelligent people all the time who didn't know. Something that to me is everyday simple. Well, of course I know this. And these are very intelligent, successful people who could learn this, but they haven't. They just don't go sit and read the tax code in their free time or, so.
Well, and these online services, they can write plans that work in every state, but then you have different county variations as well. I know in LA County, virtually everybody does a self-help trust. It triggers a property tax reassessment because if the attorneys who work at LA County file the assessment form saying this transfer is exempt, and the county will take the form and go, oh, darn it, we want to raise your taxes, but we can't. But if you just file, a self-help one and don't include the reassessment form, the county assumes you sold to somebody. They're just going to send you and reassess your taxes. And then now you got to battle it. And that phone call is never pleasant. I get those all the time. The other question I want to ask you about your process and service is the record keeping. I know my father was an attorney. He had a partner who did wills. In the old days, they had like a vault, and they used to keep customers' wills. And part of the attorney's job was they were the storer of the will, and people come in and pull the will out, and they do a reading or whatever. And then now that it's more online, I know some attorneys want to provide that service. Some use a third-party service. Some say, I don't want anything to do with it for legal protection reasons as well. Where do you fall out on the best practice to support your customers?
So one of the things that we provide is a document that the client puts down where everything is going to be located, right? That's the most important thing, because if you die, you need to make sure that somebody knows where to find your stuff. And so we do a variety of things. We have some clients who have a safe deposit box or a safe at home, and they want to keep the originals. We will keep a digital copy. Sometimes we might keep a second signed original copy, for them if they want. And then we will also have it electronically stored, on the cloud in a secure place so that they can access it. Because a lot of times, right, you might be out of town. What if you're out of town and you have a health emergency and you need to access your healthcare declaration? Well, you can get it online easily in your client portal. And then we have some clients who would like us to keep a copy of their original in a will vault, and we will make sure that they've marked the box on there, where is all my stuff and these are all my last wishes form, so that when somebody goes to it and they need to know where the original is, they know to come to us, because you are going to be filing an original will with the probate court. And so it is important to know where that document is.
Right. Great. Well, great. Well, it sounds like a complete solution. And again, I think the online solutions are pretty much, you can upload a PDF format, but you're kind of on your own. And that may or may not work for you. For many people, it doesn't. And I also add, getting a copy later is a problem, because if you have the account you set up with these online services, when your heir reaches out to them, says, hey, can I get a copy of the will? They're not going to say yes. There's a process you have to go through to get that. And so that's where some of these solutions are inexpensive, but you get what you pay for. And I think it's important to get the right service for the right person. So Jennifer, thank you so much. I do know that one way to find you is on LinkedIn, that you're pretty active there, being a friend of, I think to be a friend of Michael Zwick, you have to be on LinkedIn. I think that's kind of how life works with him. Is that the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I am a huge LinkedIn user. I'm the only Jennifer Belmont Jennings, and I did the whole clear verified thing, so it's really me. And I'm so close to 5,000 followers. It'd be great if, a couple more people want to follow my page. But
okay, well,
look, you hadn't even accepted my request yet. But I am on LinkedIn a lot. I publish a lot on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not very good at Instagram. Instagram is a thing. Like, you have to be a certain. I just don't go there. Every now and then I do okay, but
I'm with you.
I'm on Twitter more or X as a lurker. I like to read more than I do anything over there. I like to follow tax people and the British royal family, gossip. I like to read that stuff too. People are surprised.
Really? I wondered who was following that stuff.
I just love it. I lived in London. I did my whole junior year at the London School of Economics, and I just love it over there. And so I just got really excited, and I love to follow and see what fun, great things are doing. And it's just fun. So LinkedIn is a great place to reach out. We have a website. I mean, I am Googleable. Like, I'm out there. You can see our website and bio and all that fun stuff. But I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn, as long as you're not going to pitch me something and you're next after we connect. Then I just ignore you if you try to sell me something.
mgdlawfirm.com is the website, and you can click down. And one thing I learned is that there's two Jennifers. There's not the wrong Jennifer, but not the right one, and there's the right one. And so when I made the introduction, I found the right one, Jennifer Belmont Jennings. She has a phone number there, her email there, as well as all her details. And I'll just share my guilty pleasure in life is British men's fashion. Not that I dress that way, but I just kind of like the whole concept of the whole Savile Row and the way they dress. And English League soccer, I kind of like to watch as well. My guilty pleasure. So
there's a spirit over there that we don't have over here. I mean, I guess that was the whole point of the Revolutionary War and stuff. But
yes, that's why.
I get it. But
we fought the war so we could play American football instead of soccer. Exactly.
Yeah.